Je doet opeten. Good evening. This evening is about to start. If people could... there are a few things.
Shut up! Thank you.
It is a bit unclear still if the evening is about hacker culture or ethics and hacker culture, so I suggest we do both and see where they fit in. I would like to ask the three guests to, obviously not necessary, but introduce themselves. Rob and Andy, could you just give us...
I'm Rob, you know me.
Okay. Well, okay, that's the same, I think, for Emmanuel then.
Yeah, you know me too.
Okay. Andy, everybody knows you too? Okay. The one you don't know...
Any questions?
It's me, my name is Francisco. I'm a journalist, and that means I don't know a lot about a lot of things. What I'd like to ask is to start is, to have to give the idea is to start, we chat for about 45 minutes, then the audience moves in, and we see when we stop. Is that okay? I would like to ask Rob for first, is when did you realize, talking about hacker culture, for the first time, that you were part of something bigger, some movement, something, there were other people hacking too?
Late 80s, but the realization really hit home when I was at my first Chaos Congress in '88. And there was suddenly, I had maybe met 10 people that I could really be on the same level with and sort of have the feeling, yes, we have something really in common. And then I came to the first Chaos Congress that I was at in '88, which the tradition had then already been going for 4 years. And that really blew my mind. I basically went from school German with the worst of grades to actually speaking German in a week. Because there were so many people to talk to, and they didn't really speak English back then so much.
And that's why you decided to start organizing the Galactic Hacker Party a year later.
Yeah, that was the inspiration for the Galactic Hacker Party, which is a direct precursor to this.
But long before that, I guess it was in 1984 or something, you already started a club, the first Hackers Club or something like that.
Yeah, but that was tiny. That was like 5 friends or 7 friends just hanging out.
But you wanted to start something like a movement.
Maybe. I must say I don't really remember the exact sequence of events, but there was...
We want names.
Sorry?
We want names.
Yeah.
Okay, all of them.
You're on trial now.
Emmanuel, did you see yourself as a part of a movement quick after?
Well, I mean, not at first, certainly. I guess my beginnings go back a little further than that. I stem from the old BBS scene, which, for those of you who weren't part of it, boy, you really missed something cool. Like having to wait hours and hours for a busy signal to go away so you could be the single user of a 300 baud computer system and post your message about something interesting. And I guess realizing that there was more than just a couple of people from all over the world interested in the same things. That was not really a movement, but just a large group of people that were interested in the same things. And it was really cool when things started to expand and we had more and more people become part of things. I remember one of the first things I did that was unauthorized was figure out a way to get onto the Telenet system that was way back in the early 80s. And that sort of predated the internet. It allowed you to log in on a local phone call and send email and not have to wait for a busy signal. And send email to somebody else who was on the other side of the country who was calling their local number and using their hijacked account, because we couldn't get real accounts, we had to get hijacked accounts. And that's when I realized, wow, you know, there is a lot of potential here. And a lot of people that are interested in this kind of a thing.
So for you, the network created the movement?
The network is part of what created the movement. I have to go back even further to the telephone. You know, and just playing around with telephones and meeting people on loops and realizing that there are there are crazy people out there who just like to talk about how their phones work and compare information and compare equipment and things like that, kind of like what ham radio people do, but you know, a bit more nefarious than that.
Mm-hmm. Andy, yours club was the first thing I ever wrote about when I wrote about computers in 1987, I guess. You were active from the beginning because I think it's the first computer club in the world, or not? Or hackers club.
No, the first one must have been the MIT club. Those running the Modelleisenbahn, what's it, the small train club,
Yeah.
because they also founded the original Hacker Ethics, which was rules for, let's say, a large amount of people compared to the number of computers available, and to share know-how and to find solutions for problems by discussing them openly, so that not the problems would have been done again and again. So when I came to the KS Club, that was 1986, I was coming in the middle of some people smoking pot, vow inside of it, and discussing something which was happening then, and that was the KS Club was just people exchanging know-how on how electronic data networks worked and how to share passwords and share access, because what's very normal today called internet surfing was at that time illegal. There was no legal access ever planned for human beings to access networks at that time. So hacking was in a way just learning these things. And at that time the German law was being discussed to be introduced to make hacking a system illegal, changing of data, spying of data and all those things. So the discussion was, should we become an organized criminals or should we become an organized club? Like every Germans run organized clubs on doing all kind of bullshit. So we became this, the discussion, what if we become an organized club, because this seems to be a little bit more convenient than become organized criminals with all those, you know, you can't even meet public and you got that jail problem and all that stuff. So the discussion was, what's our goal? So what do we do? So I think in a way I came in the right moment, and then so WoW drive this discussion to, okay, what we want is freedom of information, freedom of bits in a way. So, and that was, so also of course ethics was a very important question at that time, because we always said, okay, we are not against the law, we just ignore it. So in the meaning of we have our own thing in mind, what's wrong and what's right, and whatever we do, it's just, let's say, a long-term use of law, in the meaning of we do things that will be legal and people will laugh, and we can, I think we can laugh today about laws making it illegal to switch your phone cord to your computer. That was illegal under German law. So it was a crime. You could go 5 years to prison to connect your computer to the phone line. I mean,
You could go to jail to have a wrong modem, couldn't you?
yeah, I mean, it was not licensed. Of course, you could buy that licensed modem for 5,000 marks, but of course we could not because we didn't have so much money.
Okay, but still, one of the first things the Chaos Computer Club did was publish a book about the ideal of hacking, or not.
Anyway, I mean, Chaos Club started in 1981, just a group of people on discussion on what would electronic network be and how would it affect society. Since 1984, it was running the magazine, the Datenschleuder, publishing also articles on how this works, publishing and how to build your own modem and so on. And the Hacker Bible, that was the first book, was in 1985, coming out, a whole collection also on reports on hacker ethics and on things people do with network computers. And at that time, that was a complete new world, in a way. So, but I mean, it was, of course, always a group, and this whole discussion about laws and ethics was very long, because when we hacked some systems at that time, and the NASA hack, for example, made Chaos Club very famous, but if you compare it to today, it was just internet surfing. I mean, it was hacking into system and look around what's there. So it was not something so big, but it was against, or at least not very well watching the law.
What do you want to say?
But what I remember from the BBSs and also from the early days of the net is this feeling among many people that were there that this was something really special. That was already this knowledge that this was something that would really change the world, or at least change the world that these people lived in, was felt back then already.
The thing that hasn't changed too is that back then we knew that the authorities and the media just didn't get it and probably never would, but we just felt like sharing this information anyway, you know, because it was fun. And I think we had, I mean, I know we had ethics back then because I remember we were in various systems, like, as I mentioned, the Telenet system, and also one of the first voicemail systems I think I ever saw called the audio distribution system, made by IBM. In fact, it's on that system that I accidentally ran into a whole group of hackers that had taken over mailboxes, and they had kind of sent out blind messages to everybody, and we just sort of met each other that way on a voicemail system. And that was really weird. But we all sort of knew that doing any kind of damage, doing something that would lock the system for people who needed to use it, we knew that was wrong. I mean, that's just how we were brought up. That kind of thing would be bad, that kind of thing would be wrong. But for a system where 90% of its users didn't even know it existed and were never using it, what's the harm in experimenting with it yourself and learning how the technology works?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the difference between, Andy says, okay, we just ignore the law, and I think, Rob, you decided to make fun of it, or not?
Make fun of the law. There weren't many laws to begin with. Many things that are now strictly illegal were legal back then. You could publish, not only you could publish on tricks on how to make free phone calls, you could actually make free phone calls. And
You could distribute a PTT gold card, for instance, with your magazine.
Yeah, that was one of the latest issues, the last issues it's in fact the last issue we ever published. But we published in total like 25 different tricks to make free international phone calls. And right now, everybody says, yes, so what? But now free international phone calls are like 10 cents. Back then, calling the US was like 5 guilders 80.
Okay, and is that a result of what you did or not?
No. It's a result of many developments the world over. It definitely helped demonstrate to a lot of people how cheap phone calls really could be and how that would change their life. It gave people a glimpse into the future because they could be on the phone with America for a whole evening and not have this be some kind of major financial event in their life. We did fun stuff. We hung out and his radio station had a listen line that you could call into, and we would call that listen line from our office and just have it on for 2 days.
What kind of listen line was it?
Well, it was a different radio station. It wasn't the one I work for now, but it was basically a very simple thing. We just had a radio next to a phone, and if you called that phone number, it would pick up and you could listen to the radio. It was so that we could hear if the station was on the air without having to turn on the radio. And these guys tied it up all the time from Holland by listening to radio for free, I guess, by calling overseas.
WUSB.
WUSB in Stony Brook, yes.
So we had WUSB on the radio for days. We had an extra phone line and we just turned it up, and it was better than AM. It wasn't quite FM stereo, but they worked. So, and that was just not so much to prove a point, but just because we liked the station and it had nice programs. And
yeah, and back then it was a really, really weird thing to think that your radio station was being heard overseas. And now it's like a common thing that everything is streamed. You can hear virtually any station, any place, wherever you are. And I think that's something we don't really appreciate, and that's something, no matter how advanced we get, I never stop being marveled at just a simple phone call and how amazing it is that I can talk to somebody through my ear, through wires across the world. I think it's amazing that we can actually listen to radio. Well, it's amazing we can listen to radio, period, but it's amazing we can listen to radio across the world. And I think people really should take advantage of that. I don't know how many people actually go out there and listen to things like B92 or, you know, the BBC or, you know, anything but American commercial radio that's out there and, you know, really appreciate it. See what other cultures are up to.
Yeah, okay, I can imagine the amazement about technology. I remember people calling as much different phone numbers as possible, and then at the end yourself scanning. So you could
no,
say hello. You said hello in one phone, and then you heard yourself.
Yeah.
We used to do that with
around the globe. And,
back in the early days when alternate long distance companies started, like Sprint and MCI, they wouldn't have actual lines. They'd have phone numbers you would call to get a dial tone. So we would call the phone number in Boston, get the dial tone, use the code that we somehow acquired, and make another phone call to the phone number in San Francisco, get their dial tone, keep going for about 20 times. And by the time you were connected to your final number that you called, there would be something like a 20-second delay because you were going on satellites and bouncing all over the place. And when you hung up, you heard more tweeps and clicks than you could possibly imagine. It was the most amazing thing. But you know, the average person, how's the average person going to understand that? You're an idiot wasting your time dialing numbers and wasting bandwidth. But it was fun. I'm sorry. That's why we do these things, because they're fun.
Okay, but that amazement, do you still feel it? Does that amazement still occur or not?
Oh yeah, every time I get my computer to work. I'm absolutely amazed. No, it's incredible. All the things that happen on a day-to-day basis on the net with the phone system, you know, the GSM technology, it's truly amazing. And I hope I never lose that you know, innocent awe.
Do you still have that too or not? The amazement with technology, what is possible? Wow.
I have a problem with the word amazement, because that's a little bit
It's what drives
uncritical thing. Of course, I played also with technology, and we hacked all those systems, and we had great fun living in the network. So I remember one of the chaos hackers, he installed a mailbox on every back system we hacked. So always you got into a system, you try to be normally very quiet and very, you know, don't show up and don't mess someone up, and then you logged into the system he had hacked already, and you got a welcome message. Hey, hi, hacker, blah. And you were sitting there, I wanted to behave. But anyhow, I mean, this feeling is one part of the story. The other is, of course, I mean, I don't know how things are running in your country than all of the years, but of course we also had a period of police actions through those who were affected by KGB stories. So some stupid teenagers, or however we want to call them, came on the idea to get money for hacking into the system. And so we always had a little bit also to find ways to not become in the games of between police and economic interests and so on. So,
but did that cause you to lose the basic fascination of?
Yeah. Excuse me?
Did that make you lose the basic fascination?
No, of course not. I mean, it's still playing around with technology, but it's also watching what's the interest around this. Because I mean, through this KGB story, for example, Stefan Veneri, the former speaker of Chaos, was imprisoned in Paris, and he was for 3 days. He was questionnaires about a computer at a company in France, which we hacked. It was a company called Lafarge, and we knew almost nothing about that company. It was just computers which did almost nothing, so we had lots of computing time for us and to calculate graphics and do all kind of bullshit. And the only thing we knew is they were making cemetery, and so just for buildings we thought or whatever, and we found out it's military nuclear plants they make under earth for rockets, for atomic rockets. So it was a military system. We didn't know, but the French government got very much upset about this, and I mean, so we realized some people pay these systems and they have some kind of interest, and so it was a little bit, yes, we have the fun, but on the other hand side, watch what's going on. So watch these struggle fields a little bit.
You called yourselves, if I remember well, data travelers.
Yeah, in a way.
A traveler is somebody. It's quite innocent, isn't it?
Innocent, yeah, sure. I mean, we're driven by curiosity, and I mean that's we want to learn. We want to know how this shit works, and using C5 signaling for blue boxing, so making these free phone calls, also meant you were talking directly to the switches. You were not a user, you were an operator. So you really started to play with these machines and really behave like I'm the guy running this here. And now I make the most strange connections I can make. So it's curiosity. And, but also this curiosity sometimes drove us to systems maybe that were driven by people who are getting a little bit upset because they wanted to keep that secret or whatever.
Yeah, intelligent people have a way of doing that. They have a way of somehow attracting the ire of the authorities. I mean, when we were playing with blue boxes back in, I guess it was the late 70s, maybe? Late 70s, early 80s? At the radio station that I worked at, in fact. We had fun playing around with blue boxes there. We figured out a way to call Iran and talk to the building where the hostages were being held. And yeah, that certainly got some attention, but we didn't cause any trouble or anything like that, but we actually got through, and the mainstream media couldn't do that. They couldn't, but with the blue box we could. So we learned a lot about how things were routed and how amazing it really was.
Okay, but were there things you did then you would not do now?
Well, I couldn't do that now because
Okay.
blue boxes unfortunately don't work for my country, at least not in that way.
No, but I mean, has your perception of things changed or not?
I still tend to get into things probably that I shouldn't get into, and I don't mean computers, just basically exploring and you know, touching things I shouldn't touch button-wise or computer-wise just to see what would happen. And I usually wind up, you know, crashing my own system more than anything else. But I do learn every time I do that. I don't go out of my way to do something that would obviously cause somebody else concern, but sometimes that happens unintentionally. And that's part of the learning process, unfortunately, for them.
Rob, you always say this, correct me if I'm wrong, that one of your goals was to show that things weren't secure.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, that's not, I don't think that's why hackers hack, to show things are insecure. I think hackers hack to learn, to get there first, to tell other people, and hopefully to share the information. And in so doing, they show that the system is secure. But I think it's somewhat naive to say that hackers are all altruistic and they're out there just to do good and help everybody. No, I think, you know, we're a little bit selfish. We want to have fun, we're curious, but we're not destructive, we're not harmful.
Were you never harmful, Rob?
Sorry, where?
Were you never harmful?
Oh, I've been young.
Never, oops.
Was I never harmful?
I mean, I try to give an answer
Would I be willing to admit?
which might be a suitable answer for you too.
Thank you.
Please.
I tell a little story also about the questionnaire when Stefan was imprisoned. He was asked again and again about a hacker called Zombie, and he didn't knew him. And when he came back to Germany, he asked all the hackers he knew, who was Zombie? And everyone just started laughing. And then the last one told him what was happening. So every time a hacker was in a bad mood, so had problems with his parents or had problems in school or whatever, people logged into the systems as Zombie and shutted them down. So the computers really, you know, went down and disks were stopping to run. And at that time, these big VAX machines, you could really switch the power plug in a way. So, and then those guys called themselves Zombies. So Zombie, you knew when you made show users and Zombie was logging in, you know, okay, you have a minute or so, then the system will shut down.
Then the system is gone.
And so sometimes hackers are in a bad mood, I guess, but normally they're really nice, and if you behave nice to them, it's gonna be okay.
We don't, you know, take the Pentagon off the net or hurt Yahoo or things like that. That's usually some idiot with the script that's bored. It has
Or
nothing to do.
it's the government itself
Or it's that, yeah, it could be.
I mean, also.
I mean, look who
I
benefits from that.
had parties at my place when we still published Hacktick, where people sometimes got a little drunk. I don't drink, so it wasn't me. But people got a little drunk, and I heard later, much later, heard a military person talk about these attacks from Europe, mostly from Holland, and the attacks seemed to be closely coordinated. Well, this was
From
because
your house.
Well, this was mostly because they thought these hackers must have some secret means of communication that's really, really fast, because the attacks, even though they come from different places, they're closely coordinated. Well, the four guys were sitting at my desk. So that's, and these attacks, they start coherently and then somehow they get incoherent. And so I could help him explain a number of these strange, unexplained phanomena.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, we've done some rowdy things. When in the time when we were receiving pager calls, we were intercepting the pager calls for the entire country. We've had a little fun with that, because then you could see a certain pager receiving a number that would be displayed in the screen. So you could call that number before the actual person with the pager called it back and said, yes, hello. Yeah, hello, this is Monique, I'm looking for Richard. Richard's not here right now, but he gave me his pager. Oh, where's Richard then? Well, Richard's with Ellen. Oh, I'm not supposed to say, oh, sorry.
Well, I remember you sending people who were paging for drugs to people who wanted their copier machine repaired.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. This is,
We had a much more low-tech way of doing it. We had at this radio station, we did do radio, but we also had a lot of fun. We had a 5-line phone where the buttons could be pressed down at the same time, and all we do is call one number and then call another number and tie them together. You know, now everybody can do that with conferencing. But it was really funny to take one pizza place and connect it to the competing pizza place in the same town and have them both talking to each other, thinking the other one had called them, and saying, look, if you call me again, I'm going to come over there and beat your ass. And then they call them again, and well, you can imagine what might have happened. Another time we would hook up the same company. Do you have 7-Elevens out here? We have 7-Eleven like every few feet in the States. We'd call one 7-Eleven, and we'd call another 7-Eleven, and we'd call a third 7-Eleven. And so someone would pick up the phone and say, 7-Eleven, and the other person would say, yes, because they thought they were being addressed. And then the confusion just went on for a good 20 minutes sometimes. But the most fun we had was with AT&T operators, where this is on a digital phone system, which came a little bit later. We figured out a way to hook up as many as 18 of them together at one time. And they loved it, because for once they didn't have to talk to customers. They could talk to each other. And they're like, hey, Bert, I'm standing up, I'm waving, look at me, I'm over here. And they had the time of their lives, and I like to think we just made their humdrum workday a little bit brighter, you know?
theft of productivity.
But okay,
God bless it.
wasn't hacking a lot about pranks like that?
Sure.
Yeah, hacking is a lot about pranks.
And hasn't that been changed a little bit?
Do you guys think so? I get the feeling of mischief in the air around hackers constantly, and I think that's probably the healthiest thing we have going for us.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
But haven't things become more serious and serious?
Oh, things are serious, all right, yeah. But you know, like we're talking about with Stefan going to jail and people being arrested for all kinds of ridiculous things back then, it's still happening today. It's happening a lot more today. And I think we still have the same rebellious attitude we had back then, where we know that it's bullshit and we have to do something about it. But I don't think we're going to let that destroy our spirit.
But I think times have changed a little bit, because at that time, playing in the network was really playing with something new technology which was used in rare places. Today, all these networks have increasing development importance in a way, and people get upset if their systems fall. And we have these political actions against the hacker scene, like with the Cybercrime Convention, driven by viruses which are reprinted in the press with making billions of dollars of damage, which might be everything bullshit, but I mean, I think we're a little bit away from the pure kindergarten playing with something new.
No, it's definitely changed. I mean, there's no question about that. But I think there's always new technology that's being introduced and new things to play with and new experiments to make, and just a lot of myths to debunk. Like, who is it who determines that billions of dollars of damage was caused, you know, by Yahoo being shut down for an hour, you know? I guess Yahoo's determining that. Well, you know, I guess my website's kind of valuable too. Maybe that's $1 billion an hour, I don't know. The thing is, why believe these people? Why take what the media says and make it gospel? I think we should spend a lot of our time saying, you're wrong, that's not how it works.
Yeah, but the methods have changed. I mean, if I would address the media the way I did 10 years ago, they'd laugh at me now. But 10 years ago, that was fun, and they didn't understand what was going on anyway. So we could much more be kids. Come on, we were young 10, 12, 13 years ago. I was really young. And now everything is more serious. You're thinking about media strategy instead of getting out of bed at 1 because there's a journalist in front of the door and standing there sort of half naked. You're actually thinking about how do we make an impression. We're doing political strategy, which can be boring at times, but it's also important that it
can
happens.
also be very fun. I mean, the whole thing with you know, the Kevin Mitnick movement and now the Dimitri movement, it involves actually putting your money where your mouth is and showing up with a picket sign and demonstrating and getting on the news and making sure people know what this is about. But the good thing about that is you know why you're doing it, which is something I think a lot of people in the past didn't know. They didn't know why they were interested, what they stood for, what they believed in. And I think there's been more soul searching and more people that really understand not only the technical aspects, but the political aspects.
But did that work? I mean, what do you see? What do you regard as some progress or a victory you made? And that,
Well, I mean, winning, of course, is always nice, and that doesn't happen very often, but I think just actually doing something, like handing out leaflets to a bunch of people who aren't hackers, and talking to them for a couple of hours, and knowing that you reach some people, and that they understand the technology and the threat of some stupid thing the government's trying to do, they know it now because you told it to them, and if you hadn't told it to them, someone else would have swayed their mind in a different direction. So you know that you actually do have some influence, and you can actually explain your position in a coherent way.
I mean, that's the only power we really have, maybe, is the power of definition. The meaning of that we can talk about things we know quite well because we've been playing around with them, and we can at a very early stadium talk about things and explain them in the right way, so that not the marketing driving law enforcement comes or whatever and tells people that's the way it goes.
Yeah, but if I can be pessimistic, that's a very temporary effect.
Yeah,
I remembered in,
right.
in '97 when we did HIP, talking to the media, the word hacker had a very positive ring to it. We had been instrumental in setting up basically the internet in Holland, or at least the publicly accessible internet, and the people still remembered, the media remembered. You were treated with some kind of respect, and now it's 4 years later, and the media comes here, and it's like, hackers, that sounds like criminals. Are you all criminals? And you have no clue how often I've answered that question. Over the past 2 days, I must have answered it 50 times.
Reporters, are you all idiots? That's how I answer it.
But this is... So this memory that you're talking to, the memory of public opinion, is very short. It buys you a few years, and then whatever has the most power in
Okay,
brainwashing
so-
or whatever you call
the
this media
difference-
process.
The difference now is that we've become the media more than we've ever become the media before. We have the power of the internet and our web zines and our own paper zines as well. I think more people are just getting out there and bypassing the mass media, bypassing the idiots, and just getting what they consider to be the truth out, and it's being listened to.
But if you say, Rob, the media now asks